Welcome, everyone, to What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould, your host, and this is Andor Declassified. We will be covering episodes 6 and 7 today. So thank you for tuning in after a short break. Welcome back, Alex Kane, my good friend and yours.
Yeah, thank you for having me back. It's been a great couple weeks of Andor. Yeah.
This episode, I read somewhere that it's not doing as well as Obi-Wan Kenobi, but like what can do as well as Obi-Wan Kenobi whenever Vader shows up, it's like he's in the show, you know? It is also Obi-Wan Kenobi. This is a character that is not as well known, but I do feel like Andor is going to age so well. It's such smart and poignant writing. And it's just pure in its cinematography and direction.
When I was really in the weeds of like Star Wars fandom and like had my finger on the pulse of like the different sort of stereotypical like viewpoints within that culture, subculture, microculture, you know, you could kind of predict what people would say about a thing. With Andor, it is pretty universally loved. Anecdotally speaking, the sort of people in the work Slack at work, older fans who saw A New Hope in the theater when they were children, everybody loves Andor. So that's really cool to see. I'm sure there are exceptions. I'm sure there's lots of exceptions, but anecdotally, you know, I don't know. I did see one. I think it's Parrot Analytics. One of those guys on Twitter did issue a correction like within the last like 45 minutes or something like that, where he said he inputted data incorrectly. And so it's doing better than initially everyone thought.
Oh, but it's just, okay.
Maybe still lagging behind like the big brand names like Obi-Wan, which kind of makes sense because that was sold as like a Darth Vader thing, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But, I think it's, it's nice. Like everybody's just sort of like surprised and caught off guard by how good it is. Certainly I am. And there's this sentiment that's like Disney let them make a Star Wars show kind of for adults and people appreciate that. And
they really are. And it's not like adults in the sense that I think some adults were expecting. This is very like this, you know, is on par with like The West Wing. From like a drama perspective, from a politics perspective, from a writing, like I keep on referring back to Aaron Sorkin because of how tight the script is. And how snappy the dialogue is, because it reminds me of that. And the cinematography is like, you know, like we're watching Dune sometimes. Like,
it does look like Dune. Yeah,
like it's got like that vibe, you know, and it's just wonderful to have these people that love making story make that kind of story for Star Wars. And I do love the campiness of some Star Wars, and I love the weirdness of some Star Wars, but this feels like a new treat, a flavor of Star Wars we've never really fully gotten before.
Yeah, like I'm totally cool with, you know, a fun little Boba Fett show that makes me reminisce about action figures that I played with when I was a kid. But this is like prestige drama television that is Emmy caliber that just sort of happens to take place in a galaxy with Palpatine, you know?
Yeah. And like weird creatures and occasionally like, you know, they refer to weird things and you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. I just really quickly want to give a shout out to a guy named Jacob on Twitter, Jacob Rubin. He just said that after listening to a myriad of podcasts about the Rings of Power, I'm filled with gratitude for What the Force show and what I bring to Star Wars stories. What a beautiful and unique and challenging perspective on stories. Thank you for all your effort and joy you bring to it. I got this like literally on one of my worst days in the last little bit. And it like made, it having that like thing out there just like really made my week. So thank you, Jacob, for just giving me a lift up.
That's awesome.
All right. And with that, let's bring the unique and challenging perspective to Andor. And we'll talk a little bit before we get into episode 6, The Eye, about power. Isn't this so interesting? We have such a, we had episode 5 and there was this massive anticipatory, energy to the whole episode where everything was kind of on edge and there was a lot of waiting. And in fact, at the very end of the episode, we have Luthen trying to hear news about what's happening with the Aldhani 6 who are doing the robbery, right? Or about to initiate the robbery. And he's holding his breath. And at the very end of episode 6, we actually get a full exhalation. Right? He's excited and he's laughing and he's cheering and everything like that because everything goes successfully.
Yeah.
But what I found so fascinating about this episode, when you actually compare it to the next episode, episode 7, is that they're both kind of showing how things get done when you're dealing with people and two different versions of how these things happen. And I really wanted to talk about power, and specifically I'm going to talk about Joseph Nye's theory on power, which is hard and soft power. It's primarily used for world politics. So there's this quote: "A country may obtain the outcomes it wants in world politics because other countries, admiring its values, emulating its example, or aspiring to its level of prosperity and openness, want to follow it. In a sense, it can also set an agenda that attracts other world politics, not only to force them to change by threatening them with military force or economic sanctions, but this soft power is about getting what it wants with the outcomes you want. It co-opts other people rather than coerces them." And so coercion or forcing people is hard power. And that's using military means. It's using economic means. So what are we talking about in this episode? We're literally talking about a military, operation to invade a military base, to steal economic means, to force more hard power or give more hard power to the rebellion. This is what this entire episode is about, is this hard power that has genuine coercion or force behind it. The only reason Cassian is helping Luthen and Vel with this action is money. It's coercion. It's how do we get these things done in a very forceful way. Whereas later on in episode 7, we'll get more into this soft concept of what happens and how the politics represented is this non-direct, indirect, but, shared cultural persuasion, right? It's soft, and it can apply to microsystems that are not on a large macro scale. So I'm really excited to talk more about that.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into the episode. If we start out with Cassian and Nemik talking about kind of why Cassian is there. And Nemik, it was like, "I had a dream about you." He was like, "Not specifically you, Clem, your name. That is probably not even your name," because he sees through it now.
Yeah.
He's so shocked. But the role of mercenaries in a galactic rebellion. This is so good.
So do you think that this is the idea that the mercenaries are sort of the people in the middle who you kind of need to draw to one extreme or the other? Is that kind of what his thinking is? These are people who are kind of in survival mode and they can be radicalized to a good cause? Is that kind of the thinking here?
He specifically lays it out. He says mercenaries are like any other tool that you use in a rebellion, ship, etc. You pay them.
Sure.
It's like a ship needs fuel, mercenaries need money, and it can get the job done. Again, we're talking about hard power to get stuff done. You need a military operation. You're not a military organization necessarily. Not all of these people are trained in this way. What is the role of mercenaries? And it's alluded to, but it's not fully explored from Nemec's perspective, which I found super fascinating. And this leans me into how episode 6, The Eye, is all about this hard power that we get.
I suppose there's also this implication that, like, people who are motivated purely as mercenaries and he's there for the money and it's, survival, and he's willing to say that openly, like, he's therefore predictable, he's kind of like reliable, like, that he's sort of solid.
Yeah.
And there's sort of a foil for that in the episode, of course, which
there is
great. Yeah.
Well, and it also lays out more about Cassian's. We get slowly unveiled over the course of this episode what Cassian's sort of code of honor is.
Yeah.
Through this whole thing.
Yeah, there's like gradations of morality and rebellion and like doing the right thing in this show. And, you sort of find everybody's line and he gets, pushed right to that line in episode 6, which is sort of like shocking and exciting and well done. But yeah.
And it goes back to like why we see Deirdre, why we see Cyril so much in these episodes. Why are they there? And I think it's because this is showing more rebels and where they come from, even if they don't come right away from the place you expect.
Yeah, and even if like every character that we sort of really attached to doesn't end up like a really good rebel by the end, this show does a great job of saying, we're going to give you a really clear sort of real world reflecting viewpoint. And we want there to be kind of, even though it's morally gray, we want to be very clear about who this, like the imperial officer with the family, the wife and the kid, he sort of gets that moment too, where he's like, I'm going to have a very natural conversation with these imperial officers as we're explaining this, operation. But in doing so, he gives us like his worldview and his political beliefs. And, you really get a sense of like, oh, this is how the Empire functions. And, if somebody hadn't really watched other Star Wars stuff, they'd kind of get all they needed to know from him sort of like, shooting the shit with his comrades about, the Aldani people and stuff. I thought that was a really great scene in episode 6.
It was, yeah, absolutely. We get this really amazing moment as the tension starts to build, and this episode really does an excellent job. And again, this is, Suzanne White,
I believe
directing.
So.
Like, it does this really excellent job of raising up the tension and then dropping it with like a balance of the Aldhani like festival going on and everything like that.
Yeah.
And we get a little bit of like the glimpse of that with the skylights too, like the things going on in the sky and how beautiful they are in amongst all of the chaos of the robbery. But we get Lieutenant Gorns. He's kind of like checking everything is get ready to go and making sure everything's good. And somebody asks him because they see one of the meteors or whatever is speeding across the sky. So an early one or something. They're saying, is it starting? And he says, the Dahani don't believe it ever ends. So yes, it
love
started.
That line.
And I love the metaphor kind of this is like, you don't see what's coming. Like the rebellion never really truly goes away. It's kind of like a very interesting way to say, the light doesn't disappear. Just because it's dark, there's always light. There's always dark. It's very Star Wars, even though it's like just a very subtle line.
Yeah, when I heard that line, it's like I thought of this idea that basically there's always good people who want a better world, and they're planning, they're waiting. And eventually you have to stop waiting and planning. But I love that line.
Yeah. And then we get the rising tension again as we get Cinta and Vel who are hiding and prepping for their moment, and they get the approach of those troopers who show up, and then they're like, oh no, have they been found? And we get the immediate relief from the one trooper being near them.
Yeah, he's relaxed and at ease, I guess.
Some good friends on Twitter were talking about how this is not the first P reference in Star Wars, because we got Wedge Antilles going to the Fresher in Rebels.
Okay. Nice.
But again, we get another hey, rising tension. Oh no, what's gonna happen? But then we get a relief, or a trooper relieving himself.
Yeah, on the rewatch, I had this thought too. I was like, it's so nice to have Vel and Cinta be an established explicit romance in Star Wars, where it's not like this burgeoning nebulous thing that people will later argue about.
No, it's explicit. Romance.
It's like they're in love, they sleep together. That's been going on. It's a very deep, believable thing. And
they
it goes
worry
from
about
there.
Each other later. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't get a ton of that from the sort of main cast in Star Wars a lot of times. So you sort of got it with Kanan and Hera. Yeah. But even that was sort of in the background, implicit, for a long time, I think. Yeah, no, is a great choice to make our space lesbians explicit. Yeah. They're the coolest. They are. We love them. Space lesbians. I need a button. And then we get our Imperial family with the Bihases. That's their name. Well, naturally, that's the Bihazai. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this moment where Commandant Jay Holds is trying to put on his belt. I was wondering if you had any thoughts, Alex. This is the older gentleman with the wife. The wife and the kid. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's very obvious what they're trying to do, which is the metaphoric. Yes, the Empire is larger, lazy. Sure. They're trying. Cassian to do that. Has a line about that. Yeah. Yeah. They're trying to draw that line, but it also is there are other ways to do that. Than the fat-phobic choice. Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with fat villains as long as it's not that's the only time there's a fat person in a major thing is when they're the villain. But anyway, we could go on and on about that. I have lots of opinions. Had more body atypical stuff with Obi-Wan. We had way more body atypical people. Yeah, which is amazing, right? I would say in the Disney Plus era in general, we're getting some better representation. The sort of the George Lucas bod or the Alex Kane bod, or anyway. But it's also more the cliche thing is the Empire's getting caught with its pants down or something. I guess. I didn't give that much thought, but there's so much in that belt thing. Yeah. The scene with the family was really amazing because even Imperials have families, right? So they humanize this Imperial guy. You're I'm supposed to dislike this guy because he's been kind of a creep and weird. But they humanize him with his wife and children. It's we don't want to be here. And his son is sick. And it's also there's a metaphor in there to say a child can't thrive truthfully under the Empire. The children under the Empire can't be healthy and full humans. Full people. He's always sick, he says, with contempt. There's so much great stuff baked into this interaction where, she's sort of it's we have to perform this family that we are not for material gain. And I mean, I don't know, there's different viewpoints on marriage and the economics of marriage and the politics of marriage, but it's this is a really beautiful little micro study of just the way it's oh, we have to look like a good, happy family with a great marriage because you want me to get the raise so that you can go, I don't know, have your, like, the sort of material reality that you want from, like, the fact that we're benefiting from the oppression of the galaxy and being on the evil side, you know,
and in so many ways to only get the way that the things that J-Hold knows need to happen, he had to use coercion on both of them to say, this is the only way we can get out of here.
Yeah, it's a very, like, you know, don't rock the boat, you know, stand up straight. Let's, like, you know, like, basically march in step with the Empire. And I mean, that's a very realistic thing, you know, don't rock the boat. Don't make the company look bad, you know, have your tie on tied up all neatly. And
where is your imperial blouse? Oh, God, I love that line so much. Just so good. Yeah. Where is your imperial blouse? I need a line of imperial blouses.
It's a great scene. I felt so bad for the kid. You know?
Yeah.
But I think it's useful when you kind of, you know, sort of selectively humanize, you know, it'd be very easy to just have the Empire be like the Nazis in Indiana Jones, and that's all they ever are. And I think, you know, some people might be like, oh, that's the way it should be. But here we're seeing, like, okay, this is the real world material reality that kind of gets people to live that way and to, you know.
Yeah. And to be okay with the parts that they play in the world. Right. I do want to say one other thing, which is it's really great to actually see children in the galaxy far, far away as part of, like, the world. Like, yeah, a commandant of a military garrison would have his family with him. That's realistic.
Yeah,
Same with seeing, you know, Mon Mothma's daughter in this season so far. Like, it's great. It feels more lived in than we've gotten previously, because although we've gotten children a little bit in The Mandalorian, we haven't really gotten children kind of before that, except for Ewok babies.
Yeah. It's funny, people, when they talk about, like, representation or politics in, like, a fantasy setting like Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, you know, that they sort of always say, like, it should reflect our world in meaningful ways, you know, maybe not always 100% of the time, or then it's not fantasy. But what's cool about Andor is it feels like human beings that you recognize, and you say, like, yes, there are political dynasties, you know, like these, you know, politicians have children, you know, there are military families who, you know, they sort of take their kids to some island base, you know, overseas, and that's sort of like a unique experience for them. And I don't know, this show's doing a really good job of that, and just kind of even, you know, just like like hooking up with a beautiful woman on the beach, you know, there's like all these sort of things that are just like the sort of human experience, I guess, that we don't typically see in Star Wars, and so it feels fresh and exciting in that way.
And identifiable. Yeah. The plan starts to unfold. We get the 4 guys sneaking in with the Aldanis as they enter as their escort. It's just so smart how they, like, kind of got in at the time. Like, it was just, obviously that was Lieutenant Gorn's plan, because he knew what to expect and could assist it. And then we get Cinta and Vel swimming in, which I loved this. Like, they waited for the, you know, meteor to shoot across the sky and then jumped in the water. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I loved the image of them sort of swimming almost like hand in hand with the device or whatever it was, like through I think it was like a little like propeller type deal, right? That's so cool.
Yeah. It also felt very like James Bond in some ways, like, oh yeah, we're sneaking in underwater.
Sure. You know, yeah, absolutely.
Like or like, you know, Born Identity, of course.
Yeah, I made some stupid Twitter joke like after I saw the episode where the adrenaline was pumping, and I said, like, I know that Suzanne White has GoldenEye and Mission Impossible in her letterboxed faves. Like, you know, it had like what do you call it? Sort of like a bungee jump down the, scenes like that, and just stuff that was like so spy movie, so James Bond.
Very.
I also love that Chekhov's gun moment where the Imperials say, like, let's have a peaceful greeting, or, of the Aldani coming into the Imperial area. They're like, let's have a peaceful whatever. And so that means snap to attention, draw your rifle, and, gather your forces. And it's like, it's a good example of how in history, in the, photojournalism of, 2016 or 2022, like how just authority being exerted sort of passively like that, it's always going to lead to violence, because like, why do we need these guys here with rifles for a spiritual little festival with, basically fireworks? Like what? And
the Dahani, chieftain says, when he greets Gorn, and Gorn understands Dahani, because that's part of his backstory, right? We heard all of that. May the eye open long enough to show you you're a good person underneath all this, or something like that. It's something equivalent to that, and I loved it.
Doesn't he kind of like lie too? Like, doesn't the chief say something like,
I hope you choke on your own goat or something?
Yeah, it's like, it's something about like long memories, and our ghosts have hands or something. I don't know.
Yeah. And then he was like, I don't want to cause any sort of like derailment with the commandant. Yeah.
But it's still sort of like this backhanded threatening thing that he ends up saying. So good.
Yeah. I love that they trade goat hide for a 3-year lease. It's just such like it's such a colonialistic thing. And we're getting the massive dominator culture interconnections, right? Capitalism, colonialism / imperialism, and sort of like the patriarchy in general. And we get the like, we'll appease the native population with a goat hide, or beads, or, that sort of vibe, which is just so ridiculous. But really the only reason they're allowing it is because of this overly oppressive power that the and coercion that the Imperials use on Altani, right?
Yeah, and it does a great job of sort of complicating the two viewpoints too, because it's like on the Imperial worldview, he says, we give them like all these sort of false choices, and they sort of pick from like all these crappy offerings, and at the end of the day, no matter what we get, we want what we want. And it's sort of that manufacturing consent idea where like the people in power get what they want. It doesn't matter. But then on the other, on the other point of view, it's like, these people are not as stupid as the oppressive party thinks they are. They are planning action, and they will ultimately, Return of the Jedi is going to happen. So, I love that.
Hey, is it starting? Well, the Dahani believe it never ends.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. So
that sort
good
of concept, right?
Yeah.
Good stuff. This writing, so solid.
Yeah. And Cassian's wearing that jewel, right? Which is like, from 20,000 years ago, theoretically, that the Rakata,
celebration of overcoming the Rakatan Empire. Yeah. Yep. Good stuff. We get Vel and Cinta doing the comm blocking, and then the, sort of run, and then she's like, oh, let's go, and Cinta's like, it's time to go, and Vel's like, no. We get this stall, which is kind of the thing. It is the thing that causes the delay enough to cause people to die.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
This is the moment where she pauses, and it basically causes the delay enough to like allow people to have that extra few moments to realize what's happening. And this sucks.
Mm-hmm. Our introduction to Cassian is him killing that friend of his, right? And it's like, that looks ruthless and ugly when we see it, but it's like if he hadn't shot that guy and run off immediately and had stayed to help him instead, like those stormtroopers would have caught up to him and got him. So that's sort of reinforcing his character a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. We also, so this triggers like the next stages, which is they go into the building and the, colonel, they're like, oh, it'll be easy. We'll just like hold these guns to people's heads and they'll do what they want. And the colonel, who's new to the base, has this like very like empathetic reaction to a child being threatened, which made me go like, damn it, dude. And he ends up being shot. Like trying to protect a child, which is like showing like all of the grayness of this organization. Like
you're talking when Cinta drops down and blasts him. Yeah. Because
he's like, no, let the child go. Blah, 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 right? Like, and R.I.P. Colonel.
It sort of plays into that James Bond trope of like, you're going to have to make some tough calls really quickly and you're going to feel bad about those calls later, but you have to make them.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if the child had gone, he would have yelled and then everything would have been done. And yeah, exactly. This speeds into, them taking over kind of the tower, right? And the action is intercut. It's like we get rising action. And just at the point of us like needing a break or, some sort of like relief, we get the Dahani like having a party outside. And so we get like a moment of like breath. We're like, oh, they're having a party outside. And then we get more rising action. And just when we need a moment to break, as they're like, threatening the family and running down to the vault and starting to take over the vault. And the guy's like, I don't know the password, but it's like they use his hand and stuff like that. Yeah. Like we get another break with the Dahani singing outside and the festival really kicking up and the fire and everything, right? Like it's entertaining to watch the Dahani chant and do their celebration. And everything comes to kind of a head when and the absolute pinnacle, like critical moment is when the communication officer who actually cares about his job
damn it,
figures things out and decides to do something.
Hold on a minute, what's all this then?
And starts to like be like, I'm gonna readjust the things. We get the beautiful goodbye between Senta and Vel. And then we get the full robbery with the rising action cut between, the comms officer who actually cares and, him like, oh, we can't get a hold of the base. It's done so well. It's beautifully edited and put together and constructed to make us be on the edge of our seats. There's this beautiful moment when we get into the robbery where they open up the vault and they're surrounded by this like unfathomable amount of wealth, and they literally take a beat and just stare at it, even though they know they're under the clock. Like I thought that was just a perfect moment.
Yeah, it's sort of those gold ingots like we saw in The Mandalorian season 1, I think, right? Like those sort of little and so there's just so many of them that it's it's like that El Dorado moment, or the pile of money in like the Dark Knight or something. It's just kind of,
and they just see it, right? Like they're like, oh my god, and then they go, right? Like I loved it so much. It was such a realistic character moment. You like, what do you do when you're surrounded by more wealth than you've ever seen?
Yeah,
we have it played out with the corporate. The comms officer corporal catching up with them, and then Gorn and the commandant dies. And Gorn's like, oh no, everything's falling apart. And then the shootout, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
And just as the spectacle starts to start, right? Like it's just perfect. It's like, oh no, everything is coming undone. And now the chaos starts that they had predicted, but they were that far behind in their plan because of the delay by Vel.
Yeah, that's a good call. I hadn't really considered that Vel's little, 10 seconds of stalling or whatever, like, is responsible for a lot of this, but it totally, yeah,
because they were already
totally
like delayed because of the guys and like all the little delays, right? They packed up. Yeah,
smart.
And then we get the very unceremonious deaths of Gorn and Tamarin. And I want to ask, did both the black men need to die?
Yeah, I definitely thought about that as well, that there was almost like too much death in this episode. And it's sort of like a cliche thing that's sort of like, YouTube movie critics will point out, like, when that's like blatantly obvious that it's like, oh, the black guy dies first, and in an action movie or a horror film. And
who did I call? I called Gorn and I called Nemec when we recorded.
Yeah, Nemec was like for sure, and then Gorn made sense because he was Gorn, playing so many angles. Yeah.
But Tamarin, I was like, what? Why? Oh, it's because he's an ex-Imperial, I guess. I don't know. It felt weird, and they were unceremoniously killed, which I know Tony Gilroy had warned everyone about, like, oh, lots of death, don't get too attached, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know. Maybe relook at these characters. Maybe look how it looks. I don't know.
Yeah, my feeling is that Taramin was sort of the character we got to know the least and had the least amount of dialogue in this 3-episode arc, and we sort of get his backstory here.
Minute?
Yeah, last minute, and so yeah, it's just kind of like, well, he was a stormtrooper, and like Cinta, like, man, she wasn't happy about that because stormtroopers are bad, and yeah, it's sort of treated as a little bit, it's not given the weight that a death might normally be given.
Nemec gets the most weight, right? He gets more weight than Ben Solo, like, right?
Yeah, and yeah, it's like. You see the contrast when one is sort of beautifully handled and one is sort of unceremonious, like he's just a hired gun, he's dead, let's move on. Like, you definitely, you notice it when it's two black men dying really quickly really together.
Yeah. Nemec gets pinned because he's hiding to do the blaster, and things aren't strapped in because they didn't have the time to finish all the strapping in, and he's in the wrong place because everything went to hell. And so he's obviously very, very hurt. So she uses the med spike on him, which is something I remember from Knights of the Old Republic.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, like using a med spike. I was like, oh, a med spike. What? Oh. Yeah, those aren't good, I guess, because he doesn't seem to be okay after. Oh, no. It's not enough to save him, right? Like, that's the point. But it is enough to get him to be together enough to help navigate, because they needed Nemec to navigate out of the chaos. And he's like, climb. And Cassian's like, no, I don't believe you. It's right ahead. Like, I don't need to climb. And Nemec's like, climb. And there's this faith that Cassian has in Nemec that comes through, and he listens to him. And that's what saves him. So Cassian's faith in other people saved them. Yeah, such a good.
Yeah. He says something like, I don't have enough speed yet. Like we don't have enough momentum. It's kind of like taking off of like a runway or something in an airplane. But, he's like, no, like now, like, that line in Interstellar, Christopher Nolan's Interstellar, no time for caution because caution will get us killed. Like, go. Yeah.
And
good,
then they make
good scene.
They make the decision to go, instead of to the rendezvous, to go and save Nemec, to go to the doctor, because they had this as a redundancy in case something happened.
Yeah.
And Cassian's like, yes, we will try and save him, because I think Nemec actually got through to Cassian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially like that vulnerability of like he's like tired and he didn't get any sleep, and they sort of share that moment where he's like, oh, you'll sleep great. Tomorrow, and you just kind of, as soon as he says that,
dark.
You're like,
Oh, Dark, you're going to be dead tomorrow. That's a metaphor.
Yeah.
That's a foreshadow of,
Yeah, there's no doubt when he said that. It was like, but...
God darn, Marie Claire, why are you calling these things?
The spectacle, by the way, the spectacle of the
eye,
the hauler moving through the eye with the TIE fighters, like, my God, like,
it's great.
Has Star Wars ever looked that good? I don't know.
No,
it's so good.
It reminded me of how spectacular the Holdo maneuver looked the first time you ever saw it. Like, just could not take your eyes off the screen. It's so beautiful.
Yeah. Let's take these sort of iconic little bits of Star Wars and like, how beautiful can we make these look if we, just go absolutely apeshit with the spectacle and the space and
what's like
color.
The most beautiful scene in the original trilogy? I think it's Cloud City.
Yeah, that's valid. I think that. Yeah, I think you're right. Like just the city with the ships moving through it. Yeah.
Yeah, and like the prequels is easy because like all of Naboo is gorgeous.
Yeah.
And like when they first get to Coruscant and like seeing that in Attack of the Clones when they like turn towards the planet in the first scene and they land. Oh man. Star Wars got more beautiful as they were able to make it more beautiful. And so I'm happy that we get more beauty in Star Wars. Yeah. As hard as this scene was.
Yeah.
And we get, the doctor's working away and we get this side scene with Skeen, talking with Cassian, like, I know what you are. I'm going to call you out. And, I don't have a brother for real. I've made that all up. Which is a great reveal. My husband Kyle thought that was Skeen testing Cassian.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, like it all happens so fast that like you're like, what is Cassian gonna say here? Is he gonna take this deal? And he's like, what about your brother? And it's like, I don't have a brother, or I never had a brother. It's like, ooh.
Yeah.
And then he's dead, basically, pretty much. Before you can kind of think about it. So,
but the entire point of this is to show that Cassian doesn't betray people at all.
Mm-hmm.
He's unwilling to go back on what he has promised to do.
Yeah.
So much so that he's like, just give me give me the deal, right? And here's the crystal, right?
Even if he like doesn't believe himself to be like a great heroic person in his mind yet, who's gonna do like rebellious things.
Yeah,
he's not gonna stab people in the back who are like Vel.
Yeah. And he wasn't gonna betray Nemec. He wasn't gonna betray Vel. He wasn't gonna betray all the people that that he had done stuff with, like Skeen. He wasn't Skeen. That was very clear by him killing Skeen in that moment. He wasn't him. That's just a psychological way to show that. Very, very clearly, I kill that version of you, that devil on my shoulder who's tempting me. I kill that version. Whatever you said I was, I'm not. It's a very symbolic way to show that.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very well done.
He walks in and, explains the situation, gives the crystal back to Vel, gets his money and goes. But before that, she's like, here's Nemec's, the rebellion's, ideas, right? The book he has been writing, his treatise on the rebellion. He wanted you to have it. Oh, what a punch in the gut.
Yeah. I don't want it. He insisted.
Yeah.
So good.
But he has to take it anyways, which is so good. So it's with him. I think we see it in his case in episode 7. So
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. He hasn't opened it. So it's cool because we'll get it. I hope we get him reading Nemec's thoughts on Clem.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be really cool.
Because he said, like, I didn't write about you specifically, but I wrote about, your type of person, mercenary. And
yeah.
I also like that we get this sort of unresolved conflict too of like, he comes in with the blaster drawn and Vel's like, what's, and then Skeen's dead. You're going to have to just take my word for it that he said these terrible things that you're not going to believe. And then in episode 7, of course, we're starting to sow the seeds of like, that's gonna go somewhere fun. So
yeah. There's unresolved things between them, and she's going to be forced to confront him again, right? Which is great.
I think she's going to be made to listen to her heart and trust her heart over her head, which is interesting because she is sort of that cold, calculating spy master type that like Luthen is, or Cassian is in Rogue One, but she's going to have to, we know that she's not going to kill Cassian Andor in this show. So
no, I mean, he's got plot armor. It's good.
he's got a little bit of a story. So,
we get the reaction from the ISB, which is great, right? Because it's like just calling the, alarms and everything like that to say like, oh, how dare they? How very dare they? Right. But then that's contrasted with the success Luthen sees in this.
Yeah, there's we sort of get a glimpse of the Senate and all these people, like basically the eyes of the galaxy turning to this, crime. And it's like people know that it's not really like the specifics of the crime that is super important. It's like the message and what it means, and the sort of against the odds kind of craziness of it, and then the fact that it succeeded. I think that in the eye, that imagery of like, this miraculous piloting through like this blinding spectacle where like all the Aldani people are watching it at once. It's sort of like, the eyes of the galaxy are on like this little band of rebels, It's very cool.
So cool. Yeah. And then we get, as I pointed out at the start of the episode, the exhalation of Luthen, that we had the holding of the breath to kind of end the last episode.
Yeah.
So
he's like,
good.
Oh, thank God. And then roll credits. It's well done.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We all were holding our breath for this whole episode, and we were allowed to exhale. All right. On to episode 7, the announcement. Just so good. I just wanted to talk about like soft power a little bit more in detail because of like what we get out of this episode. So soft power tends to work indirectly by shaping the environment around you. So it's about culture, political values, policies, right? And sometimes it can take years to produce a desired outcome. It's often, conceived of as a, better way to do things, but it has been used for extremely dictatorial, governments like Hitler, Stalin, Mao. They all used soft power to create acolytes, right? To create true belief in the thing that they were creating, right?
Yeah.
So the key is that soft power is neither a form of idealism or liberalism. It's just a way of getting your desired outcome. It's not necessarily good or bad. Both military, hard power, direct coercion, all of those things, and soft power are just tools in the toolbox. And this all boils down to the how of all of this happening is politics, right? Mm-hmm. Politics are how soft power actions in our world. And you may not think of politics as something that you experience day to day, but if you've ever been part of any organization with multiple groups of people, you have literally dealt with politics, day to day. So just the straight up definition of politics is a set of activities associated with making decisions in a group or other forms of power relations among individuals, right? So even if you're in a job and you have your boss above you, they have power over you, but that doesn't mean that you can't politically influence them. And we're going to get how all of this soft power plays out through politics in this episode. And it's gorgeous and I love it. And what I love most about it is that these are some lessons that, some people in this world have just like never understood, that this is how so many people get things done without ever having to like lift a very aggressive finger, right? Or coerce.
When I watched this episode, I was like, Marie Claire is going to love Deidre's scene in this episode so much.
How did you know? I loved it so much.
I was like
so excited.
I feel like we just sort of know too much about each other's sort of day-to-day personal life, but I was like, we're friends. I was like, she is going to so love Deidre's little scene here where she triumphs in the workplace. I have a whole
metaphor for it. I've thought about it so much.
It's so good. I can't believe that was in Star Wars. Like, so great.
It's so great. And if you've never been in a work situation where somebody tries to throw you under the bus, like, you're very lucky.
Yeah.
Sometimes that happens and you're like, what? Oh my God. Yeah, exactly. All right. So any thoughts before we get into the episode?
Any other thoughts? I just like that this one isn't like this clean start where it's like, oh, we're going to fast forward and go to some planet and like start fresh with like another arc. It's going to deal with the ramifications of what we just saw. And, I don't know. I like that, it's dealing with all the sort of material and emotional fallout of what was, sort of the most, the best episode of Disney Plus television to date, one might say. It's like we're going to dwell on this and kind of unpack it.
Whereas I appreciate this episode so much better than the other one.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly like more pleasurable to watch.
To me, it's kind of cool that we're talking about them together because they really do this very interesting thing of comparing and contrasting to each other.
Yeah. Like episode 6 is like hard power and action. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. And I can use these like interesting things to talk about the episodes themselves in contrast. Whereas if we were doing it if we didn't have to do it this way, I don't know that I would have seen this parallel as easy. Yeah.
I rewatched both of them as like one piece in one sitting, for my rewatch. So yeah, we're sort of thinking about them as a whole, which is kind of fun.
Yeah. So we're back again to our depression in man form Cyril.
He's like, I'm gonna sit here and eat my sad blue cereal again with my mother who thinks I'm just like the family disappointment again.
So after we recorded, they were able to figure out that it was Trolls World Tour specialty cereal, where they had picked out the blue and cocoa pieces and made an entire bowl of them.
Incredible.
Isn't that amazing? People could figure out where it was and when it was filmed based on... So whenever Trolls Worldwide came out, that's when...
it was like 2019 or something.
Yeah.
I saw that tweet as well. And I was just like, man, like Star Wars fans, like they don't take long for sure.
They don't. They figure stuff out. Like when the prequels came out and we all figured out that the comms that they were using were just Lady Gillette's.
Lady Gillette, even as a 9-year-old child, I recognized that one, I think, because my mom had one.
Gillette.
This is in the bathtub. I've seen this. Anyway.
But he has his brown suit and talking all about the high collar and what it says and how he's had it tailored to be that way and how desperate that makes him and how he's not just like with his suit speaking for him. He's also speaking for Uncle Haro and his mom and the family. And, oh my God. It was so good. I love so this. Great. Like a really terrible family dynamic that's happening every week.
She's like, listen, I loathe you, but I want the best for you.
Yeah. You're kind of terrible, but I'm trying to support you in my own way. But it's mentioned that he's got an interview with the Bureau of Standards, which I googled Bureau of Standards, and there's literally only one that I could find, which is the Bureau of Standards of Jamaica. And they work to create higher standards in their commodities, processes, and practices. It's basically like, I don't know, maybe a subset of laws into policy, I guess, but for everything. So you think about like the FDA has to have policies about kind of which drugs could and what kind of like things can be produced, but it's all in the same sort of bureau.
Yeah.
And we get that impression that that's the intention of that bureau later on when he's there.
It's it reminded me very much of THX 1138, that sort of
more brutalism.
More to the extreme, and also like it's imperial adjacent, like he's part of the empire, but not like the sort of military, Admiral Piet sort of empire that we think of.
It's the people that create all of the inane rules for everything.
Yeah.
That make the empire go round. Like, or like, you're like, okay, what is a weird one about the United States? You guys can't have Kinder Surprises, right? Which is the little egg that has a toy inside of it.
Oh.
A child may choke, right? Like that's sort of like the standards that you would get out of this, Imperial Bureau of Standards. In Canada, we can't have caffeinated beverages that are not brown.
Interesting.
No, I'm not kidding you. So you have like pops that might be like, I don't know, fluorescent green or something in the States that are caffeinated.
Yeah.
Our pop that is fluorescent green in Canada that should be caffeinated is not caffeinated because it cannot be caffeinated if it is not brown.
Because it'll appeal to a child and it'll be like, ooh, colorful or something. I don't know.
I think it's just that brown is like associated with caffeine, or somebody made up that rule. We have another one called, from the CRTC, which is the our broadcast standards, basically. Canadian content, which is that if it's on a streaming platform or in a like cable network played in Canada, there must be at least 40% Canadian content.
Interesting.
So, Bureau of Standards. We all have it. It's just not always called a friggin' Bureau of Standards.
Yeah. It's probably a lot messier in reality, but you get that sort of...
I want to know what weird ones people have in their countries that are like, why do I have this? Why is this a thing?
Yeah. I mean, taking your shoes off at the airport, or, the big controversy in the US. And I think that there's more to the story that people have unraveled, and it's more complicated than people assumed. But, like McDonald's coffee says like caution hot in all capital letters. And it's like the law that
that's
it has.
actually like a full, like there is, somebody told me about it one time.
Yeah, I think it was extreme.
It was extreme, and like they actually do need to do that because the coffee was extremely hot and caused first degree burns. Yeah.
But it's just one of those things that people point to as like, well, of course it's hot, it's coffee, but I love the imagery of this place, and it's kind of like calls back to Loki and that the what do you call it? The time
variance authority?
Yeah, the authority. Yeah, very similar kind of very George Lucas, that black and white, and just the use of the lights everywhere and the repetition. It's really beautiful.
So we get the ISB continued, and we get it. Well, Deirdre is dressing and like prepping for the meeting, which is such an interesting choice. She's doing up her hair. She's zipping up her uniform,
the little flap or whatever.
Yeah, because she's called in, right, for this thing. And I really love the line that the guy speaking says, "They will be shocked when they see how we respond, how tightly we will close our fist." It's like, okay, yeah. So like tribute, customary or festivals are going to be tightly monitored for whether they're covering up these things. People are going to be arrested and then they're going to get like really extremely harsh sentences. And it's going to be bad.
Yeah. And Luthen kind of says that was the plan in a way, like the idea that they've been choking us so slowly we've almost stopped noticing or something like that. The great line that he has. And so it's like the announcement is like, okay, like we need to wake people up and get them out of their complacency and, show them that you can, be a fly on the, sort of bothering the Empire. You can do something to piss them off. And, if the Empire gets worse, then people will wake up,
This is and it comes to a head later on, but the Empire has been using like soft power in so many ways, right? Like, so they've been using things like, we establish safety. The Empire is here for your security. But then when that's created with some cognitive dissonance of how they actually do that when actually threatened, that's when people can actually take a hard look at what the Empire is actually doing, because all of their hard power has been used very softly with the populace thus far. But that changes with this attack and with this robbery. And he spells it out and says it, but he says we will be instating the Public Order Resentencing Directive, or PORD. It's like not even an acronym that you can like make into a word, like PORD. Like it sounds like bureaucratic like nonsense, like the kind of dumb shit that you hear at work and kind of like roll your eyes at. I swear somebody came up with Public Resentencing Order Directive, and they were like, prod is a little too on the nose. We have to say to change it to PORD. Yeah, I'll bet you're right. I feel like that's funny. Like in the writer's room, they're like, prod. Yeah. It's a little too on the nose. It's not subtle enough for Andor. Yeah. We need to make it more subtle, because that prod would totally be something that like Tarkin would do, but prod is phase 2. We need a giant like phallic laser to blow up planets. That's how we get the message across. And it's funny how you point out the soft skills in this episode and stuff, because this is kind of the first episode that really brings up Palpatine in a big explicit way. And you always beat the drum about how Palpatine, co-ops or like, co-ops like feminine power for his agenda. And I mean, his whole thing as a Sith Lord is, it's not that he had some big Sith army out there. He was working in the shadows, and that's kind of interesting. George used to talk about him like he was like the devil of the galaxy, right? Like sure. He was very charming as a senator, right? And he the hard power was always used through other people, never himself. Yeah. He's always like we believe in these values. If that's what you want to do, let's do it kind of guy, right? An old friend like Master Kenobi, which is funny. It kind of makes me think of like Charles Manson, who is like responsible for all these murders, but like really the people who carried out the murders were like teenage girls that were like under his influence and stuff. His spell, yeah. That's really wild. Yeah. And the guy actually says, I spoke with Emperor Palpatine this morning. Yeah, that was the part, I think. Yeah. Was that? I think that was the wolf guy that sort of draws the line from like the Clone Wars cartoon to like A New Hope. He's like on the Death Star in that scene, I think. But I didn't realize that until after the fact. I think Star Wars Explained put out a video. I was like, oh, that was him. That was the guy with the white mustache. Of course it was. Like, it's Colonel Yularen, actually. Oh, okay. Yeah. That's the Tom Kane guy from the Clone Wars, right? I think. Yeah, no, it was him. Yeah. So you're right. He is the He's the ISB guy.
It's subtle because, I mean...
Yeah. They had to get a different actor, obviously, because, age and stuff. But yeah, no, it's a great way to show, like, he's still involved with the ISB then, and he's more in charge, and he's from, like, that Clone Wars period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good. It's good stuff. Good stuff. We like it. We get Deirdre during this whole conversation making this face. And I was like, why is she making a face like she just smelled poop or smelled something terrible? She's just making this face this whole time. But then we immediately cut to her explaining her logic to her guy, like to her attaché, and saying like they're making all of the wrong moves.
Yeah.
They're treating like this is like a robbery when it's not. They're making an announcement and we're helping them. We're helping them make this announcement. She's so smart, right? Like she's so smart, and they make her believably smart, which is so good, right? Like there's no arguing this person is super competent, right?
Yeah. She authentically thinks like the rebels do. Yeah.
Yeah. And it also makes me think that she's too smart to be with the Empire forever.
Yes.
Same with like Cyril. Cyril is too passionate to be with the Empire forever. I feel like I'm right about these other stories, these third stories, because really what we're getting Deirdre as a focus, we're getting Cyril as a focus, and we're getting Cassian. And Vel is part of Cassian's story. She's tied to Cassian's story, so I'm not going to count her. But those are the three main plot lines that we're getting. Vel, Cyril, and Deirdre. Or sorry, Cassian, Cyril, and Deirdre.
Yeah.
And then, she explains that. And then immediately in the next scene with Luthen and Mon Mothma, we get a confirmation from Luthen. Yeah. Yes, we're making an announcement. We need them, as you said, to overreact. We need people to wake up. We need them to be using their hard power instead of their soft power and lulling people into a false sense of security. Right?
It's like Neo and the Matrix, right? Like that movie's such a useful like tool, like just the way, just being told things are bad and like they could be better and here's how you go about making them better. That's not always useful. You need sort of men with guns to come in and chase you out of complacency and follow you out onto the ledge of, the side of a skyscraper. And then you're like, oh shit, stuff really is bad because now it's affecting me where I live.
Yeah.
And then you're like, now I'm awake.
Well, and we see how these things develop through media, right? Like where we see people standing up and then people realize, oh, hey, we can stand up. Oh, wait, you could stand up? Oh, great, right? And we get that reflection through this completely, right? In this whole episode.
Marva.
Symbolically, Mon Mothma comes back with the goddess and the devil figure, right? She comes back with the piece that she originally borrowed to see if she wanted it. And she's like, I'm pissed at you. I'm returning our agreement, basically, of us working together.
Yeah, I don't know about this anymore. I'm getting cold feet about this rebel thing, Exactly.
And, he has an excellent point, which is rebellions are expensive and you keep on waiting for the perfect person to step in when, like, Mon Mothma, you're the person. We are the people. We have to be doing these things. And you're using these excuses to say you can't do things.
Yeah.
I'm tired of waiting, basically.
Yeah, she had a real, like, distaste for Saw Gerrera's methods in Rogue One. Yeah. And it's like, we sort of see that reflected here where, action makes her nervous, but she's very, good-hearted and smart. And so she's contributing in the ways that she's sort of socialized to,
like she's never going to be the one who's going to be like firing a gun. I don't think. Like I really kind of hope we never get that from Mon Mothma because it's just not her role. But it really actually made the line. This scene made the line at the end of Return of the Jedi, just before midway through, where she's like, "Hey, many Bothans died to give us this, to bring us this information, actually feel like completely this character.
Ooh, yeah. Like the idea that like, yeah.
She's sad about the loss of life. She's sad about the suffering of the galaxy. She's sad about the methods they have to use to get what they need.
Mm-hmm.
And this felt so in character.
Yeah. It's like this idea that, history is sort of written by figureheads and it's remembered through figureheads, but it's so much messier, and like the people who really make history are, working in the shadows, sort of unsung. So that's people like, especially in the post rebellion, era, right? Like the First Order era, look back at Mon Mothma as this like guiding light, beautiful, like, oh, she's, the rebel leader, blah. But it's like, but she wasn't necessarily the one who was getting shit done, right? She's just the one who had to take all of the leadership on, right? Which is, it is hard. I like that they're telling these kind of gritty, the people at the bottom who are making stuff happen. Yeah.
That scene in general where he offers her, so this is where the subtle stuff is. So she brings back the combined face of the goddess with the other one sharing the same mouth, and he offers her the like
cudgel again.
Yeah. Which is again the symbol of hard power, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Military power. We are going to be doing this as like violence. And she said, I won't be taking either.
Yeah.
Today.
Yep. Yeah. She's so conflicted now. And it's like she's sort of clinging to hope of that sort of person who's going to come in and make everything easy for her, like you were saying.
Yeah.
And so we kind of get that in the episode, and it's interesting.
It's great.
It's like, is this too?
Yeah,
I don't know how fast I'm jumping ahead, but
no. But we'll get there soon. The party soon, yeah. But sure. We get Cyril at the Bureau of Standards, and we get like the entire brutalist room with all the like little mini cogs that people sit in. Like these are the cogs that run the Empire.
They are literally
it was so good symbolically. It I was just so happy. Like I'm like, oh, you cannot be an individual in the Empire, right? You cannot be your own human in the Empire.
They're like lug nuts or rivets or something, right? Like they're just kind of nothing, but very cool.
And he's like, if you speak to any lifer, it's so great. Like, it's like, now that you're here, you're part of the Imperial machine. This is your life. You will die here. Like, that's what we're getting from Cyril, which is so good. And he's like, I upheld the rules, and, I intend to have my record expunged. And they're like, yeah, we'll just edit it a bit. We control all the rules. Why not?
Yeah. Yeah. Might as well.
It was easy.
Fresh start, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Fresh start, right? Like, you can do that. And your uncle will appreciate it. Fresh start.
Yeah.
Like, because when you control all the rules don't apply to you.
Yeah. Yep. There's a lot of
so good.
Like cop stuff with Cyril, like since the beginning. He's very much like that. Like, let's explore that idea of like the good cop. Very interesting.
Yeah. And then we get the he gets assigned to fuel purity. I love it. It's so good. It's great. It's like this sounds like the most boring thing to create Imperial standards for fuel purity.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't get the sense that he's like really thrilled about where he's at in this episode. He's just kind of like, oh no, like this is not, I need to go further or something. Yeah.
I do think that he's going to come across Cassian at some point doing this. Like there's going to be something, because they keep on telling his story and he has to be drawn back into the action at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my first thought, was that like, okay, so where Cassian ends up at the end of this episode, I was like, maybe Cyril is like how that gets fixed or resolved or whatever. But then, of course, you've also got Vel sort of heading in that direction too. So it's good. It's good setup for like, there's so much conflict that, so many Chekhov's guns being sort of laid out.
So Deirdre takes advantage of the new imperial edicts.
Yeah.
To finally get her information that she's been asking for, which is to draw conclusions at a galaxy-wide scale and not to be restricted to her sector, which is so good. She immediately jumps and takes advantage of what she's able to do, and gets it done, right? She's like, this is important. I'm using completely legal means.
Yeah.
And that sets us up for the situation later, which I'm really, really excited to talk about. You're like, Marie Claire, I love this. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we get Kayla. She's the assistant in Luthen's shop.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I didn't recognize her for a while, but then I was like, oh, that's who that is.
Yeah, no, but she dressed up specifically to look different so that she could meet Vel without, having too much problems.
Mm-hmm.
And we find out, like, this scene in general, I just loved so much because, like, both they look amazing, right? Like, they dressed in, like, super Coruscantian looking outfits. Vel had earrings. I was like, yes, more earrings.
She's like, I better not dress like a Viking on Coruscant. I guess I'll,
I finally dressed like, okay. Yeah, no, and her hair was done. She looked top notch, right? Like, awesome.
Yeah.
And we hear that, the person we presume just to be like Luthen's assistant is actually quite a bit more skilled and significant than we thought. She had recruited many of the others.
Yeah.
And confirms that Luthen had doubts about Skeen. So it's like we get all of this information that, people are playing parts to, get things done, but are more significant in the form of the rebellion. And we hear from Mon Mothma later on that it's like only 3 people know about what she was going to talk to this guy later about. And I'm like, does that Luthen, her, and the assistant Kelia?
Oh, yeah. I had the same conversation in my head, yeah.
Bail is in the rebellion already. He has to be. Bail has to be already in the rebellion because he is in it before this point.
Yeah, I think in my head I was like, she means like herself and the 2 people in the shop. But yeah, that makes sense that it would be Bail. Yeah.
Yeah. So she might not even know that, like, she knows all of these things because Luthen is the type to, like, keep her out of the loop of all of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I loved that Vel said, have you heard from Cinta?
Yeah.
And she's doing what she was told. Like, you cannot even reach out or hear, like, listen to conversations because those are tracked.
Yeah. It was
good.
Very much like, that idea that, like, relationships are just like baggage that are gonna, like, trip you up, and, like, you're a spy, damn it, you're a rebel, like, very good stuff.
But I love that it's being mentioned, it's being talked about. People are like, I do this for more than just your ideals. I do this for the people I care about, and that's so good. It's so validating to watch this in Star Wars. Like, why do we do these things? Not just for ideals, but for real damn ass people.
Yeah. Yeah. There's that great line later in the episode, like, that's just love. Nothing you can do about that, or something like that. I was like, oh, God damn, that's good. Because it's just like, you can't sort of, like, resolve all that, like, no amount of heroic rebel stuff and self-betterment is going to bring his stepdad, unmurder his stepdad from the Empire. Like, that's done. And I don't know, some really beautiful stuff in this episode, and the more we talk about it,
it ties together from different people's like what they're going through. Like Vel's, as you just said, we get both Vel's perspective, but we also get Marva's perspective about Clem. Clem, or the original Clem, who Cassian pulled the name from.
Yeah, I think that's new information, right? That he named himself after his stepdad, basically his adoptive father. Yeah.
Speaking of Marva and Cassian and
I love B.
I mean, that's where we go next, which is, kind of bringing Cassian up to speed with what's been going on at home. And, there's a saying when you're like on a journey of self-discovery and change, you can never go home again.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like it's like part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And he finds out that Tim with 2 M's betrayed him. And he's like, we're leaving. And she's like, tonight? I don't think we're on the same page.
Yeah.
It was great. Like this, what we're getting from Marva as a character is kind of what I've always wanted from Star Wars, from a mom character.
Mm-hmm.
Like she's just so good. She's
amazing. It's like almost doing this like metaphorical version of you can't go home, in the sense that like, we have to like deal with the reality of the Empire now, and in doing good things, the peace has been disrupted, and it's not like the literal burning of like Lars and Beru type of thing that Luke gets, but it's his home has kind of turned against him, and
Yeah, let's finish with Marva and Cassian.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No. Let's do all of their stuff, because I think it's important to talk about them before we talk about all the Coruscantian stuff that happens. So, Cassian meets up with Bix because he's worried about her. And we get like all of this backstory information we never got before, which is like, remember when your father caught me climbing over the wall? And Tim thought we were back together. Like, so they used to be together.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the vibe that we got with the first episode, but it was never confirmed.
Yeah, they trusted us to kind of like put the pieces together. And I love that.
Yeah. So good to like trust the audience.
Yeah.
Wow. And, we get all of this, like, why is this place important to him? And why did he come back? Well, it's because his heart is still here in so many ways. But he also wants to try to warn off Luthen, because he knows Luthen is a very dangerous person. So he's trying his best, like, through Bix. And then we get this, like, massive flashback to what happened to his adopted dad, who Clem and Marva were together, right? When they picked him up on that planet, they became his parents. He, other than his sister, he didn't have parents anymore. Yeah. They became his parents, and they raised him, and they raised him quite well. And Clem died when, Cassian was an adult or near adult age. Trying to de-escalate a situation and trying to protect people's lives.
Yeah, collateral damage, doing the right thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really beautifully handled. Like, it's a really, like,
it really is.
Horrific scenario if you just sort of put down the facts of what happened. But, like, the way it's handled is so good, and the way it's edited. But it's like he was that hero,
Yeah, we get Marva's reasons for hiding. Right. And then we get Marva's reasons for choosing to put on her best coat, walk down to the square with a smile on my face, because the Aldhani attack on the garrison showed her that people still stand up to the Empire.
Yeah. Yep.
People are standing up. And he's like, what are you going to do? And she's like, whatever it takes.
Mm-hmm.
They can't take away the place in my head where I'm with Clem.
Yeah.
That was the best thing. All of this felt so thoughtful, real, and wise in its writing.
Yes. Yeah. And like even the best Star Wars too, like often like our characters' interior lives aren't treated in that way.
With care.
That idea that like my life is filtered through like my perceptions and my brain, like, that idea that you can have that sort of daydreamy, that the world is filtered through your thoughts.
Yeah, it's your, unreliable narrator of the world.
Yeah.
It's your own version, right? It's so good.
Yeah. There's like sort of radical philosophy things where they're like, reality is just like whatever happens in your brain. Yeah. That's all it is. And there's like this weird grain of truth to that they're acknowledging through here. It's beautiful.
And I loved how she said, I love you like nothing, or I love nothing like I love you, but you can't stay and I can't go. And he's like, but I'm going to be thinking about you and worrying about you. She's like, that's just love. Nothing you can do about that. Oh, good stuff. Good stuff forever. So
great.
I love it.
Beautiful, beautiful writing. And just like, that idea that, that, there's no, I lost it. Damn it. I lost what I was going to say.
It feels as poignant as grief is just love persevering or preserving, like from WandaVision. It felt like that kind of line to me. It felt good.
Yeah, like it's that Buddhist idea that like existence is suffering, and so often we don't like to think of this, but like so often that suffering is our very mundane personal experience of like love and relationships, and it's not always blowing up the Death Star. It's not always, whatever sort of like we think of when we think of like Star Wars suffering, Darth Vader in the lava. Like sometimes, suffering is just these beautiful poetic little things, that Andor is doing so, great at showing us.
Yep. All right, let's go back to Coruscant and end things off before we get to what happens at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
We get the Mon Mothma party, which, she meets up with her old friend from Chandrila, Te Kolma, one of my oldest and dearest friends, she says. And, she starts to talk and she's trying to suss him out. And he's kind of judging her for like staying in the political realm on Coruscant and like kind of swimming in the muck, I guess.
Yeah.
Sort of. And she's like, oh, I see. Maybe I can trust you with this. We get this beautiful moment where she's interrupted because her dad's like, oh, you have to go and ask your mom if you can leave because she'll get mad at me if if I don't get you to ask if you can leave. I literally had this moment this week with a family gathering where my eldest was like, Mom, can I leave? Because I'm done. Like, I don't want to be here anymore. I'm like, yes, that's fine. At least you asked, I don't know what they're doing exactly with the daughter yet, but I'm really looking forward to seeing how it's going to play out. Yeah.
Yeah. Like clearly her role seems to grow rather than diminish. Like she's not going away. So
yeah. So there's something in that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, is she going to take action, or is she going to be like some kind of cautionary tale about like how seductive the Empire? I don't know. It's very cool.
Yeah. I love how she's like, I want to talk to you about this thing. Is it personal or politics? Oh, politics. I suggest you hesitate. What an interesting way to say that.
Yeah.
My politics might not mash with yours. They would be considered quite extreme. He doesn't say how extreme and in what direction.
This is like such a great character. It reminds me of like the Mads Mikkelsen Hannibal Lecter, where everything he says is sort of like, he's not lying, but you do not necessarily want to trust this guy.
Yeah. So this is all like, again, soft power.
Yeah.
They're using family, their history together, their do we align on an ideological perspective? Exactly, right? And she's like, everything you know about me is a lie. So she reveals all of her cards. I believe in like, these more things. And I've learned from Palpatine. We hear his name again, right? I've learned from Palpatine. I show you the stone in my hand and you miss the knife at your throat. Okay.
So
this
great.
Is literally the metaphor that we've been talking about this whole episode of hard and soft power. I show you the thing in my hand, right? I'm showing you, I'm being very kind. I'm being very like open about what I'm doing, but I also have the knife to your throat. But I don't know that she understands that first and foremost, Tay is a banker.
Yes.
And capitalism only exists because of the structures that hold it up. The imperialism, right? That holds up capitalism. They are buddies. They're best friends.
Yeah.
You're not a banker unless you agree on some level that you deserve to like take money from others.
Yeah. There's no moral compass to capitalism, or if there is, it's not a good one that you want to think about. And so, you know, and I mean, I worked at a bank for like 5 years, and, you know, other than the fact that it was a bad paying job, you know, one of the reasons that I left it and sort of radically changed my career was like, you can't be a good person all the time and work at a bank. You can't do it. You know, yeah, it's
and he's still a banker. He made a bank joke.
Yeah.
He is a banker. So in the end, we cannot trust Tay.
Yeah. These scenes,
unfortunately,
this whole sequence,
kind.
Yeah.
But he is two-faced.
It's very, it calls back Anakin and Palpatine's relationship of like, okay, these guys have been, you know, I've known him since I was very young, Padme. He's watched over me ever since I came here. And, you know, you get sort of the sense that like he was like her hot high school boyfriend or something, maybe, you know. But yeah, the fact that he's a banker tells us many things. It tells us that he, you know, he will have to discriminate, you know, the almighty dollar is your God, and you go in the direction of higher, you know, better return on investment, and
we've already talked about the connection between the corpos, like the corporate organizations that are controlling the galaxy and are allowed to exist under the Empire. Right, we've already talked about that. So that's a parallel that's already been drawn. And banks don't exist unless, you know, like his capitalist politics idealistically work with imperialism. It's harder to say, let's be more democratic, because then there's potentially more restrictions and things like that. So I don't trust Tay.
I do not either. I mean, you know, I would have like these sort of seminars or whatever at the bank where they try to like sell you on a worldview to get you to think one way in terms of like, oh, when you're making sales as a banker, it's a good thing, and here's the bullshit reasons why. But at the end of the day, banks profit off wealthy people trusting them and saying, you know, this is a place that I want to put my wealth and entrust these people with my large sums of cash. And then they profit off the poor people who live paycheck to paycheck and, you know, overdraw the account and all these fees. You know, there's that sort of truism that you see on social media. It's very expensive to be poor, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, that's how bankers make money, and that's how the empire exists, and you know how you get star destroyers and the fear will keep the systems in line, you know.
Where do you think all the money comes from, right? Like it's taxes, it's tributes, it's all of that, but it's also just like how capitalism works.
Yeah, you need the poor in order to be rich, you know. If everybody's the same, then I can't live in my glistening Coruscanti palace with my fancy Rolls-Royce speeder and etc.
So I kind of wonder if Mon Mothma's going to lose access to her family funds.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I definitely think this guy is like, you know, her serpent devil that's going to totally just, he
seems so nice and kind, but no, I don't trust him.
Yeah, I was like,
trust him at all.
I was like, where the hell have I seen this guy? And I looked him up on IMDb, and his face was so familiar. It must have been because of V for Vendetta is where I must have seen this guy. And it's funny. That's a movie all about revolution and overthrowing the government. So it's very apropos that it's in this episode. I did appreciate that. Probably a coincidence, but it's a fun one.
Let's talk about the ISB thing I've been wanting to talk about all episode. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So we get this intro, and the main guy who's in charge of the conversation, Partags,
something like that.
Yeah, he's like berating one of the guys, like, why are your reports so late?
Yeah.
You suck. And then Blevins like, I have something to report. I am calling out my colleague. It's just like perfect because Deirdre knew he would do this.
Yes.
And so it's like one of the best things you can do is use your own enemy's attack against them.
Mm-hmm.
This is like the fundamentals of judo and jujitsu, which is that you use their weight against them to flip them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And she explains slowly, because she knew he would do this, why everything that his assumptions about the world are wrong, that we need to be more proactive instead of less. And to her shock, and everybody else is in the room, the major agrees with her. And I love the line where she says, you're asking the wrong questions. Do the rebels see the galaxy the way we've divided up our systems? No. Systems either change or die. Oh my goodness. That was so great.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, that's, and Blevins like, what if everybody thought the way that Deirdre did?
Yeah.
That would be terrible. And the major's like, oh, that's an interesting question. Maybe we would get more done. Maybe I wouldn't have to be like, I like this guy more and more. Sorry. After this episode, I'm like, oh, maybe he is smart. I don't know. He can't run a meeting, but he certainly understands politics.
Yeah.
Right? This is all, like, he uses this meeting basically to teach them all political ass whooping.
Yeah, this is all amusement for him. Like, he's just smiling the entire time.
His fun. It's like his little class, like his like political science debate class. It's so interesting how he plays it out. So he gives Morlana the Ferrix system to Deirdre, like, oh, this has been distracting you because you haven't been, doing your thing. And then he calls her out into the hallway after all of this, surprising everyone. He's like, just a second, Deirdre, walk with me for a second. And he congratulates her and then says, watch your back. And literally it's like 2 seconds he gives her in the hallway.
Yeah, it's like she has this big smile on her face, like she just won. And then he's like, watch your back. And it's such a good illustration of like the power dynamics when you have like a boss and then you have all these like underlings who are like, I have to make the boss happy because my, now
everyone's going to be gunning for you, Deirdre.
Yeah.
You're too smart for them. She's too smart for the people in the room, right? She is.
Yeah. It's, like, the Partizag or whatever his name is, it's sort of like he has nothing to lose. Like, he's in the position of power. So it's all just a game to him, a game of politics. And
he can watch the underlings under him fight all day. As long as he gets his results, he gets rebels to capture. He finds missing pieces. He gets to win because he gets to take all the credit when they go to the higher ups like Yularen to say what successes they had.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It reminds me of like the sort of the way the Sith work in like the old Star Wars video games, like the idea that like all the sort of little like acolytes, they're all squabbling and betraying each other because, it's a competition basically. And, a healthy work environment, not like the Empire, sort of like the rebels at their best, it's a collaborative, we all bring value to the table. We are working together to help one another achieve, a single goal. Whereas the Empire is kind of indicative of like, a corporation or like Hollywood studios where it's like their job
toxic
is just
work environment.
Their job is just to make the asshole directly above them look good. And that's, their job is to keep their boss from getting fired so that they are not going to get fired and on and on. So
let's talk about Cassian and the very quick incarceration that he experiences. So we get to this planet. It's like a beach planet or, a beach paradise.
Space Miami. I
literally wrote down Space Florida.
Yeah, well, it's like Niamos or something is the
Yeah.
name, I think. So it's sort of like the Greek mythology version of Miami or something. Niamos. And yeah, he's sort of like in paradise. He's like hooking up with like a beautiful woman. He's like,
yeah, and she's like, "Hey, baby, go get more drugs."
oh, you thought drugs? I immediately was like, oh, like chips or something.
I thought drugs.
Good call.
The green ones.
Good call.
I liked the green ones. No, I think they were totally doing
like
space
pills.
drugs.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh,
you're right.
Yeah, they were totally doing drugs in Star Wars. This is Star Wars for adults. But again, we could tell this was not written by Jon Favreau because they say his name.
Yeah.
The name he's going by, Keef or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And find out his pretend name. But he's like using the shower to like dig through his thing, and he's already figured out where his lockbox is, hidden with all his money and and Nemec's journal and stuff like that, or Nemec's treatise. And then he's like, I'm gonna go down south, I'm gonna go the other way. She's like, go to the other one, And no, he goes the other direction, and we get these like shore troopers that are chasing after people.
Yeah.
And they just assume he's with them.
Yeah, he's like happens to be going the same direction, I think.
Happens to be looking at them, right?
Yeah.
It's like being arrested for walking or looking at somebody funny. And I mean, I hate to like say that that's so real, but like
it feels real.
It feels so real, and people have been arrested or shot for less, like in America especially, by the police.
Also, notably, I believe that this was confirmed to be Sam Witwer voicing the shore trooper, which is another fun little Palpatineism in the episode, kind of like he's sort of voiced Palpatine and Maul and various other people, but there's a lot of Palpatine in this episode.
Oh yeah, yeah. And they use the K2 or K unit to pick him up. It's like hang him here or whatever, and he's like, arg, arg. He's like, no, just watch, no. Yeah, yeah. And then we cut to the sentencing immediately. She's like opening nuts or something.
Yeah, she does not care about this human being.
It's like, oh, it's too bad that this happened because now. Oh no, the consequences of your own actions, Cassian. It's now not 6 months, it's now 6 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm super excited where this is going because he's going to have to break out of prison, I guess, or like some sort of penal colony or some sort of like slave internment camp, or I don't know. It's going to be great. Yeah. I'm just so happy.
They definitely are heightening the stakes even further somehow. Like it didn't seem like possible, I guess, but yeah, you've got sort of two characters on a collision course with them, and you've got Luthen out there sort of with his various designs as well. So,
and Cassian Andor is a loose end, so they're going to have to break him out of prison probably to kill him, and then they'll break him out of prison, and then there'll be a whole like thing about the rebellion, and then he'll join them.
I thought about in Breaking Bad, like all these guys from the meth operation go to prison, and it's like even in prison, they're like, we have to kill these guys. So there's like a whole big, operation to like get weapons into prison and have prisoners kill these guys who they're afraid are going to rat them out. And so I'm like, is Vel gonna break into the prison and then end up getting him out, or I don't know, but there's a lot of fun stuff that they can do.
It'll be fun to see what happens. Well, any final thoughts for this week, Alex?
Well, just that, like, when you said that you liked this episode better than the, more action-based one.
Look, the action one was amazing. It was a spectacle. It was amazing. But there's so many subtle, beautiful things about this episode.
Yeah. I think you convinced me in the course of our conversation. I was like, damn, she might be right. It might actually be better once you start thinking about like just how great the writing is and all the memorable character moments that we get.
Yeah.
It is
for the character development in this show.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. Like certainly the spectacle is nice and, all that stuff. But yeah, like this was such a pleasure to watch in a way that maybe episode 6 was more stressful, but Man, magnificent stuff happening.
Gorgeous, amazing, fabulous.
Phenomenal show.
Phenomenal show. And we will be back next week. And I want to thank everyone who listened to the very end of the episode last week and sent on their thoughts and condolences for what I was going through. My mother has actually passed now, and we've taken the time we needed. So now that we're back, but I really, really appreciate all of the kind thoughts that people sent on. It was nice to see. So thank you to all of you. And I am okay. So thank you. We will be back next week. Alex, where can people find you if they're looking for you online?
Mostly on Twitter at Alex J. Kane, Kane.
Awesome. Take care, everyone. Cheers. Thank you for listening to What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould, your host. Our music is provided by Christy Carew for What the Force. We have a Patreon at patreon.com/whattheforce. We would like to thank all our patrons, especially those who love and are obsessed with What the Force. Cheryl, Melody, Night Huntress, In Wild Space, How Rude, Anna Perez, Neil, Joe Allen D, Christian Luca, Josh Johnson, Scott C, and Susan. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube or leave a 5-star review on iTunes or other pod apps. It helps people find the show. Check out our other channel on YouTube, What the Fiction. You can connect with us on Twitter at WT Force Show, What the Force Podcast on Facebook, and our website, whattheforce.ca. We also have a Discord. Links are in the liner notes. Feel free to reach out and start a conversation. Cheers.